Okay guys, so it's almost time to turn these cards off and then get those thermal pads replaced. So just to recap here, I am currently mining Ergo. Each of these cards is getting an average of around 200 mega hash, 215 mega hash. The temperature on the cards between 96 and 104 degrees when mining on Ergo. I'm also going to stop this miner now, and I'm going to open up mining on ET hash Solana. So I'm just going to start that up. You'll see the difference in temperature again. So this is just a recap, a follow up to my previous video to show you what the temperatures are like before actually changing the thermal pads. Briefly, there I even got 97 mega hash, but now as it starts to warm up, that's going to drop drastically. So it's down to 85 already. 78, 74, 78, and it will stabilize anywhere between 77 and 83 mega hash. That's pretty much the best I am getting at the moment, and I do have an overclock on these, so GPU temperatures at 55, power usage is limited because it's thermal throttling, although I'm asking for 75%, it's giving me 57%. And these are the overclocks, just to recap again. And I'm gonna leave those untouched both before and after to see what the difference is going to be. Normally it stabilizes around 80 mega hash on ET hash. Here we go, it's going up again a bit on the second one. Okay, I do actually have a fan blowing there on the back plate as well, which is passing air through here as well, so it's kind of cooling that a bit as well. But it's not really making that much of a difference, so we'll see when the thermal pads are installed. On this one I don't have the fan. It's not really making a significant difference. You can actually compare the cards here as well. So here you can see that I've already gotten up to 108 degrees Celsius. Currently 106, 108, it even gets up to 112. Sometimes I've even seen 114, which is dangerously high. So I don't plan on running this until I get these thermal pads replaced. That's why I was mining on Ergo. On the other GPU, it's the same story, 108, 110 degrees, 112 maximum. The core is pretty much okay, it's 54 degrees, so it's just a memory junction. We'll change those thermal pads and we'll see what we're going to get. As you can see, the power limit there is at around 200 watts for both cards, 197 on one, 205 for the other, average of around 200, so it's 400 watts for both. So that should go up because it will start hitting the 75% power limit that I've given it, which will enable it to mine faster once the new pads are installed and can keep the temperatures down lower. Okay, so I'm just going to make a note of these and we'll change the pads and see how it goes. These are the pads that I'm going to be using. Thermalright Extreme Odyssey thermal pad. So these are the 3mm and 2mm pads. Someone also suggested that I put in a 1.5mm pad because it might actually be needed where the GPU core is. Otherwise there'll be a bit of a gap if it's any thicker than that. But we'll find out as soon as I open this up. I have the 120 by 120 by 2 or 3mm, depending which one. You can see the specifications of the thermal pads here. So basically they are 12.8 watts per MK Kelvin. Okay, so their thermal conductivity should really be quite high. These pads were around 40 euros for the 2mm and another 40 euros for the 3. Thermal conductivity is the same for these as well. So let's give these a try and see how it goes. So here we've got the card on the bench, and basically we've got these screws here that need to be all undone. So you've got those two. These are slightly larger, these 4, and those are keeping the core together. So the GPU core is being held by these screws, which are spring-loaded screws. So there's a spring underneath those. Those need to be undone as well. This is holding the back plate as well. This screw up here is also holding the back plate together. And we need to also remove these 2 screws right here, 1 and 2. Okay, so we'll get started on that and we'll remove the back plate and open it up, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's open. The 3mm pads I was talking about that need to fit in, I was talking about them fitting in between the back plate here underneath the board, where currently there doesn't appear to be any thermal pads, but once we open that up we'll see it a bit better. So in between that gap right there, there doesn't seem to be anything. The pads here are actually above the chip, so they're sitting on top of the chip, so you can see that white one right there. But underneath the chip, that also gets quite hot there as well, where the soldering is. So that down there, I'm going to install a 3mm thermal pad right there as well to help absorb the heat and to conduct the heat out through the back plate out here as well. So that should help even further to lower the temperatures as well. Okay, so I'm going to start undoing these screws here, the ones that I showed you earlier, and basically it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 screws. Okay, do keep some containers handy. Okay, so if you've got screws with the springs at the bottom as well, I'm going to put those in one container. These ones might be different than these ones, just so make sure to see how long they are, how thick they are, and make sure the threads are the same and everything, just so you put them all in the same place when you're coming to assemble this again. Okay, so just make sure to take these notes. So let's begin. Okay guys, so here you can see that I've got these two fan cables here. So you just have to take those out slowly. Okay, just disconnect them like that. And you've also got another one which is down here as well. Okay, so we'll just take that one out as well, so we can be able to work more comfortably. It's only a 1250 euro GPU, so no pressure, right? Okay, so here you can see that we've got the pads here, the pads on the copper. So these do actually look to be quite thick. I think they are actually 3mm. We'll actually check those out. There's the thermal paste right there. So this I'll wipe off and give that a clean. There is a lot of oil on this. So these were basically sitting on the memory modules down here. And you can see, look at all that oil. There's so much oil right there. I don't know if you can see this. Look at that. See that shining on the memory module? It's all oil. So I'm going to clean that up with some isopropyl alcohol. I couldn't really get this third cable out here, but I should be able to work like this. I'm going to have to obviously remove this board. Now here we've got the thermal pads, as you can see, on the voltage regulator. On the memory, the thermal pads are up here, and these do look to be 3mm. Those are going to go around the GPU core. I don't know why some people told me that 3mm was going to be too big, but for here 3mm looks fine, because I actually took out one of my thermal right pads, the new one. That's 3mm right there, and that is pretty spot on right there. So it's going to be pretty good. So these have got a backing here. The backing here is not really sticky that much, but the front is. So if I put it right there, as long as it doesn't go above obviously these screw holders right there. Speaking about screws, an important thing when I was taking this thing apart is that two of the screws are actually smaller. Those two screws were the ones that fit here where the silver little holes are. So these two here are shorter and smaller than the others, so don't mix those up. Obviously these you can't really confuse because these had the springs. So these are those four right there. And then the rest, the other four, are all the same the remaining 4 are all the same size, and those are the ones that fit on 2 here on the outside, 2 here, 1 on the chip here, and 1 down here. Okay, so it's just the shorter ones that you have to be careful of, so don't put a longer one in the shorter hole, obviously. So I've put some isopropyl alcohol in a container here, and I'm just going to basically just dip in the cloth and give the GPU core a wipe to get rid of all that thermal paste, and we'll be applying new thermal paste. And the new thermal paste I'll be applying is the GC Extreme, Gigabyte GC Extreme. Now I know some people have said that this thermal compound does tend to break down over time, but I haven't really found any issues with it. And it does provide superior cooling efficiency than what was on there before. Okay, so just give this a bit of a clean and clean the memory modules from all that oil. Okay, you don't need too much isopropyl alcohol. Okay, just a bit to get it nice and clean. Okay, so you've got 4 chips here, 4 chips here, 1 here and 1 here. Those are all the DDR6X memory. So that looks clean, and it dried off pretty fast as well. And the GPU core is nice and clean as well. Some people are not doing this bit, so they're just replacing whatever pads they have here. And these pads here, 2mm seem to be fine for these here, to cover these. So these are the voltage regulators right there. So basically, I'm just gonna peel that off. So if I actually get my 2mm pad right here, okay, maybe 1.5, maybe 1.5 would have been better, but that seems to be pretty accurate. I don't know if you can see that very well, but seems to be okay. 1.5 might have been slightly better for these parts, but we can squish that down from 2 to 1.5, I'm sure. Okay, so let's move on with the thermal pad installation. So I'm just going to peel these off, cut them the same size. That 3mm pad is actually spot on the same height as the other one. 3mm is perfect. Okay guys, so on the heatsink here as well, you can see little squares. So that's where you have to put the thermal pads in between. So from there to there, from there to there, from there to there, from there to there. So it's not that hard, okay? So just place them in there. One, the small one there, a large one here, one here. And those will sit pretty much on the memory module and other chips as well, if there's another chip. So for example here, there is the memory module. Okay, and right next to it there is another little small chip there. Okay, be careful not to touch chips and stuff with your bare hands. If you can, try and wear an anti-static band as well to try and help protect the components better as well. So I'm going to move on now, and I'm just going to take this board off now, because I would like to install some thermal pads underneath the memory as well from the underside, because that will help to transfer the heat to the back plate better as well, and provide better thermal conductivity right there as well. So that should help cool things down better. Okay, so I'm just going to take this off right now. The screws of the board are the same screws, the longer ones, not the shorter ones, like there was on the cover, okay? Like those other 4 that were on the cover. So don't worry if you mix those up, because they're exactly the same. And you've got 2 on the board right here, and you've got another one at the base here. So you've got a total of 3 screws to basically dismantle the board, and that should then just pop off nicely. And obviously you've got the power plugs here as well. This wire, as I said earlier, I couldn't disconnect and I don't want to try to force it out. Basically, once you've removed those 3 screws, 1, 2 and 3, you just pry the board a bit and it's going to pop off right there. And you can see the other thermal pads underneath. What I am going to do is I'm going to add to the underside of the memory. So right here to this underside, right here, and right here where those little resistors are underneath the memory, in order to provide thermal conductivity more to the board. These pads that are installed here are at least 3 millimeters. There were only thermal pads for one section of the memory, on one side only. So on the other side, under these sets of memory right here, under that underside there was none. So it was only just for one of them. So this was sitting like this. So underneath it was only that one right there. That was touching one section only. So I'm going to add the 3 millimeter on this side. I'll get rid of this, put 3 millimeter, get rid of the other one, put 3 millimeter. So they're all going to be the same thickness, and hopefully that will provide good conductivity as well. And I'll see if the thickness, the 3 millimeter, is enough. So I'm rechecking the thickness on the back plate side, and it actually is 3 millimeter. So this should actually be just fine for that gap. Okay, so for example, this one right here, this pad right here, I don't know why they didn't just go up to here with it, because I mean it's all the same components. They didn't go down there straight up. So I'm just going to fill this whole gap in. Obviously thermal pads cost money, so they try and cut down on costs. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this in, this thermal pad that they did from the factory. I'm just going to add a bit here. Pretty much it. That's the underside done. So I've covered this chip here, which wasn't covered on the underside of the memory, this chip here, which wasn't covered as well from underneath. So you've got the memory modules there, and I'm going to be doing those over here now as well, the 3 millimeters, so they'll stick onto there. Okay, and I've covered pretty much things that weren't there. So these two were not here, and this bit here was not here. These I've replaced, okay? So these were these before, and I've replaced them. Nice. They're all greasy and oily. So there's a nice squish there. Now these ones here will continue to get more pressure on them as soon as we close up the rest of it with the spring, 4 spring ones here. So those will be able to get pressure. Just make sure that when you put the back plate on, that the thermal pads don't move out of place or anything. That's why I put the sticky side onto the board, so as much as possible it doesn't move. Okay guys, so that's pretty much the top part done as well. Don't waste any of the pads, so just even if you have a little bit left over, keep it, okay? So you can actually amalgamate that with another one, so you can join it with another one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the strips on the resistors. So that's going to be 2mm and 2mm. These I'm not going to touch because these are thinner and I don't have that size. Okay guys, that's pretty much it. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to just put some thermal paste onto the GPU here. Just give it another wipe. Get that nice and clean. Remove any oils and dirt. Okay, so I'm not using, guys, a propel, just a normal microfiber cloth here now. These I'm going to leave the factory ones. We'll see how they do anyway. It's not really a big deal if they're not going to be, but I'm afraid that if I put 2mm there, it might not actually fit because of the screw. So the screw might actually not go down enough and it might be squished in too much, so I'm not going to change them for now. But hopefully the biggest of this whole thing is to actually replace these ones here, which are the memory ones. And also, in my opinion, you should also change the underside ones as well to create better thermal conductivity with the backplate. So let's put some thermal paste on here. So that should be enough thermal paste. Now you can spread it around, or you can just put the heatsink on and that will spread out evenly on its own. I'm going to spread it around a little bit just to get a bit of an even surface right there. You don't need to go outside of the chip, so just try and stay within the chip itself. Don't put it on too thick. You don't need to put it on too thick. Okay, just spread it around. You can also try to use the 4-dot technique and even put one in the center, 5 dots, and that when even pressure is applied, it'll kind of spread out on its own. So I'm just going to apply this thermal paste and then close it up. Okay guys, so we're going to start closing up the GPU now. So don't forget that you do have these wires here. Make sure this one, if you took it out, is plugged in properly. I didn't really need to take it out. While you're at it, you might as well check that these two power ones right here, let me just show you. These two power ones right here that are coming from the 8-pin connectors, just make sure that those are properly in there as well, because sometimes they can become loose as well. So let's just start closing it up. So tilt it on one side like this, so the wires reach, and then you'll be able to connect the plugs here. So just plug that in there and plug that in there. Make sure they're firmly in, and that's it. You're good to go pretty much. So there you go. The wires are in there. Okay. Now I'm just going to close it up. And obviously the copper and the thermal pads here will press down on the thermal paste, and that's pretty much it. So I'm going to start tightening the screws. It's important to use a crisscross pattern when you're tightening the spring-loaded one, so I'm going to start with those first. So don't tighten all the way. Just a few turns in a crisscross pattern. And now we can start tightening down. A few turns. Tighten. Tighten. That's pretty much it to get kind of an even spread right there. Okay. It's pretty good. So if we can just take a look before I tighten the rest of them. Okay, you can see that between the back plate and the board, the thermal pads are in there. I don't know if you can see that much. They are pretty squished in there, so they're good. So remember, the two small ones, they're going to go in these here, right there. So now the final four. So one here, one there, one here, one here. And we're done. Okay, just make sure to do a final check. Make sure everything is nice and snug. Don't tighten too much. You don't want to kind of cut the threads of the screws. Okay. Give that a nice wipe. And that is the video card assembled again. So, looking forward to actually putting this on the rig now and seeing what kind of hash rates we get. Time to power it on. That's the card right there, and that's the other one next to it. This one I do not have the new thermal pads on yet, so I just put them on these because this one doesn't have a fan at the back, so I wanted to kind of get those temperatures down better. So I'm going to turn on my power supply at the back here, and let's see what happens. Spinning. Lights are on. So okay, both are on there. No smoke. That's a good sign. Alright, let's switch on the system and go to Windows and see what kind of temperatures and hash rates we're getting. Okay, so I've booted into Windows, I've loaded up the notepad, the before and after. So on ET hash, that's the temperature I was getting right there, 108 to 110 degrees Celsius on the memory junction, and a 77 to 80 mega hash rate. At the moment I'm not mining. GPU temperature is at 46, quite cool. Okay, GPU memory junction temperature is at 52. The cards were both detected, obviously. Okay, so one of these now is the one that I just replaced the thermal pads on, and I think it is going to be number one because it is in, this is slot kind of 0 and this is slot number 1. So this is the one we changed the pads on right here. I don't know if you can actually see any of the pads there. I don't think so. Yeah, there's one there. Okay, anyway, and I think this is the one as well because the GPU temperature is at 35 with the new compound. Okay, the fans are not spinning on either card because currently I'm not mining, so you need a load for those to start spinning. And here the thermal limits are on no, obviously. Junction temperature is at 42. On the other one, the junction temperature is at 52. So that's a 10-degree difference just at idle. I'm just going to start up the miner now. I'm going to start with ET hash. Both cards there. So on the one that I get thermal throttling, that's the one that I don't have the new pads. So I've done this on purpose, so obviously you can see the differences between the two cards since I've got two of them. Okay, this memory junction temperature is 104. That's the one that doesn't have the thermal pads, number 0. That's the one that has the monitor plugged into it, and that's the one I didn't touch. The one I did touch, memory junction temperature, going down the list. It's at 80, while it would have been at 108 like the other one. And the other one actually has an external fan back there. So fans are spinning. There we go, on both cards. So the new card, let's focus on the new one. So this is the one I haven't touched yet. 52 on the core, 108 on the memory junction. And on the new one that I just did the new thermal pads on, 86 degrees. Look at that difference, 86 degrees. Let's let it stabilize a bit, obviously, because it will start heating up as we go along. So at the moment, what I'm getting is 99 mega hash and we're holding strong, okay? On the other one, it's still at 73. So number 2 is number 2. This is 1, this is 2. Or in hardware info, it's 0 and 1, okay? So this is 1 in hardware info, but it's 2 in the miner. So let's just let that go on. I haven't touched the overclock settings. I'm going to show you those again. So here I am running minus 400 on the core, plus 1150 on the memory. 75% load. It isn't hitting it on the first one, but it now should be easily hitting it on the second one. So switched over to that, and there you go. I'm hitting the target now. The power usage I asked for was 75, and it's using 75. And I think that I can now start to fine tune this even better and get an even better hash rate as well. So let's say 99.19. I'm using 255 watts. I'm sure that I can just lower this down a bit, maybe down to 70, and save that and see how much it's going to reduce the hash rate. So just give it a second there to apply the changes. So I've reduced it down to 70 from 75%. Okay, now it went down to 238 watts. That's 20 watts less. So the mega hash did go down. Okay, now let's see with 70% usage if I can actually pump up the clock a bit of the memory. So I'm going to go to 1.2 and let's see what that does at the same power, 70%. So from 95.8, let's see after a while what it does. 95.7 seems to be going down because the memory core, the GPU core, I think is too high. So let's reduce that to what I recommend to be minus 200 on the RTX3080 Eagle. So probably other RTX 3080s as well, but on my palette it's minus 80. So I'm just going to put that to minus 200. So this will allow the power to go more to the memory boost instead of the core, because we don't need the core for mining this. So as you can see, I've already made progress. 98.6. That's still 238 watts. 99.3. Now 99.6. I'm going to do something ambitious here, and I'm going to try and hit 100. Come on, let's try and hit 100. Okay, so I'm going to reduce the clock even further. Let's say to 180, and I'm going to save. Drum roll. 99.68. It's getting very close to 100. Okay, let's see what the temperatures are like now. So the memory junction temperature is a nice 94 degrees. This was similar to the memory temperature I was getting when mining Ergo before replacing the pads, because Ergo is a less intensive algorithm when calculating the hashes, okay? The GPU temperature is at 61, which isn't too bad when mining ET hash. 99.7. Okay, 99.7. It did slightly increase. So let me try just to bump up the memory a bit more and make it 1250. Take it slow when you're overclocking. especially if it's your first time. Worst case, it will just crash and probably restart the miner. 99.95, and come on, drum roll, 100. We've hit it. We've hit 100 mega hash with the new thermal pads on the RTX 3080 Eagle. Awesome, 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 awesome stuff. 100.22, 100.21, and I've reduced this to 70% usage. So I'm using even less wattage. Even less wattage, 238 watts, 100 mega hash. Ooh, can't wait to do the other one. That'll be a combined 200 mega hash for this system, when before the thermal pads, I was getting 160 mega hash, because it was doing around 80 mega hash, and I'm being generous for each one of them. It was more like 75, 77 maybe, wasn't much more than that. Sometimes it used to hit 80. So now you can easily see that I am getting 94. Let's see if it's 94 degrees still. So here it's 94, current is 94. We are not throttling, okay? So the power, yes, is limited. Thermal throttle is no. We are now not throttling. The other card, I have not replaced the pads on the other card yet, is thermal throttling, okay? It's going between yes and no, as you can see. It is currently at 112 degrees, so I'm going to stop that because that is really, really hot. You can put your hand on the back plate a bit and it actually does burn. This one, it does burn, but it's more sustainable, okay? Now, I'm going to show you again. So see, 70 on the one that I haven't changed the pads, 100 on the other one. I'm really, really happy with that result. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I apologize that it was slightly longer than my usual videos, but I wanted to try to explain to you how to install the pads correctly as well. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so down below. Smash that like button and hit the notification bell for more great videos when they come out on my channel. Until next time, guys, take very good care of yourselves, and thanks for watching.